I always believed a mother should trust her daughter. It wasn't something I questioned. It was stitched into me like instinct, like muscle memory. When you carry a child in your body, hold her hand through fevers and heartbreaks, cheer from the bleachers. Even when you don't understand the rules of the game, trust feels like the least you can offer. But I've learned trust isn't always a gift. Sometimes it's a gamble. 2 weeks after closing the sale of the mountain cabin my late husband and I bought when Sienna was 5, I walked into a private banking suite with a cashier's check in my purse and a plan for the next chapter of my life. I was going to buy the lake house we had once dreamed of retiring to before cancer rearranged everything. $10 million. More than I'd ever imagined having in one place, and I didn't want to risk delays with wire transfers. The property had 3 interested parties. Cash, they said, would seal it. It was Sienna who offered to help. Just leave the money in my safe for the night. She'd set her tone light, like she was suggesting I crash on her couch. It's professionally installed 4-inch steel biometric lock. Safer than any hotel. I hesitated for a moment. But she smiled like she used to when she was 12 and still braided my hair on Sunday mornings. You trust me, right? Of course I did. Her condo was pristine as always. Floor-to-ceiling windows, scent of eucalyptus candles. One of those fridges that lights up when you knock. She poured me a glass of Sauvignon Blanc and curled up beside me on the white sectional, like it was any other evening. We talked about the lake house, what I'd do with the garden, how I might finally adopt that golden retriever I'd always wanted. She laughed at my excitement, and I let myself believe that maybe after everything she was still that girl who used to draw blueprints of tree houses and beg me to build them. I went to bed early, wrapped in a throw she'd left folded at the foot of the guest bed. The apartment was quiet save for the occasional hum of the city outside. I fell asleep with a rare, unfamiliar feeling in my chest. Peaceful, almost safe. Sienna was barely 6 when David died. One moment, we were planning her birthday party with paper crowns and strawberry cake, and the next, I was explaining to a wide-eyed little girl why her father wouldn't be coming home again. Grief doesn't knock before entering, it just takes what it wants and leaves you to sweep up the pieces. I didn't have time to collapse. I had a child to raise, rent to pay, and a hole in my chest I didn't have the luxury to acknowledge. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital, mostly night duty and trauma. There were weeks I slept 4 hours a night and lived off vending machine crackers and coffee gone stale. But I made it work. Ballet lessons on Tuesdays, reading groups on Saturdays. I patched clothes instead of buying new ones. Skipped meals when bills piled too high. Every sacrifice felt worth it if it meant giving Sienna more than I ever had. And she was brilliant even then. Composed in a way that made adults pause. Teachers adored her. At recitals, all the other parents clapped politely while I cheered like my lungs might burst. I still remember her expression backstage, once a tight-lipped smile, eyes darting to the other mothers in heels and silk scarves. "You don't have to yell so much, Mom," she'd said. It's kind of embarrassing. I chalked it up to adolescence, but over the years it didn't soften. She never quite let go of that quiet discomfort with where she came from. When she won a scholarship to Stanford, I cried so hard I had to pull over on the highway. She didn't mention me in her speech. Later, when I asked why, she said it wasn't that kind of speech. I kept showing up. Moved her into every apartment, stocked her fridge, mailed care packages with handwritten notes she never mentioned receiving. When she landed her first job at a biotech firm, I offered to take her team out for lunch. "You don't need to come to the boardroom dinner." "Mom," she said, avoiding my eyes. "It's not your world." I swallowed the sting and smiled anyway. I kept believing I had time. That love would eventually settle into recognition. That night, sitting in her condo sipping wine I couldn't pronounce, I let myself believe she'd come around, that the distance between us was finally closing. But the truth is, some distances aren't crossed with time. Some are measured by what you fail to see until it's already too late. The sun filtered through the blinds, slicing soft lines across the guest bed as I opened my eyes. For a second, I forgot where I was. The unfamiliar ceiling, the scent of expensive detergent, the hum of the downtown traffic below. Then it all came back: the wine, the conversation, the money tucked away in Sienna's safe. I stretched, sat up, and noticed the silence. No clinking dishes, no footsteps in the hallway, no cheerful voice offering coffee. I checked the time: 7:42. Sienna was always up early. A meeting, a spin class, a carefully curated life waiting outside her front door. I padded into the hallway, calling her name once, then twice. No answer. Her bedroom door was open. The bed was made. Too perfectly. Guest room perfect. I walked faster now. The hallway felt longer than it had the night before. When I reached the office door, something shifted in my chest. The bookcase that concealed the wall safe was ajar, just slightly, as if someone had pulled it closed in a hurry and missed. My fingers were trembling as I slid it the rest of the way open. The safe hung wide open. Empty. No duffel bags. No stack of tamper-sealed bills. Nothing. A square of white paper sat on the safe's bottom shelf, perfectly centered. I reached for it slowly, like it might burn. Mom, this is what freedom looks like. Don't call. Don't chase. It's my turn now. Say. I stood motionless, the note fluttering slightly in my hand, from the breeze slipping through the window crack. My mouth opened, but no sound came. I reached for my phone and dialed. Straight to voicemail. Again and again. Rebecca, her friend, gone too. Emails unanswered. Texts undelivered. A digital wall. I sank into the nearest chair. The hard, sculptural one she kept in the corner for aesthetic, not comfort. It didn't matter. I couldn't feel anything anyway. For the first few minutes, I waited for the panic to overtake me. For the sobs to rise for rage or devastation, or something to rise from my chest and crash into the room like a storm. But it didn't come. Instead, I sat there utterly still and felt something stranger, an eerie quiet. My heart didn't race. My eyes didn't burn. I read the note again. Once. Twice. My hands stopped shaking, and then, without warning, a small sound escaped me. Not a sob. A laugh. Soft. Disbelieving. Almost involuntary. Because even in the moment of betrayal, something in me had already known. And something else in me had already prepared. It started with a question she shouldn't have asked. We were having lunch at that sleek vegan cafe Sienna liked. White tables, drinks, in mason jars. Everything named after someone's meditation retreat. She barely touched her avocado toast, too busy scrolling. Then she glanced up and said, "By the way, what did you end up doing with the proceeds from the cabin sale?" I blinked. "I haven't moved it yet. I'm finalizing the lake house this week." She nodded too fast. "You're not keeping it in that old regional bank, right? They barely have a mobile app. You should let me help you set up something smarter." Her tone was casual. Too casual, like a net cast without tension. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea and stared at my own reflection in the darkened window. I'd seen it before in trauma patients, in families trying to hide bruises, in hospital coworkers pocketing vials they weren't prescribed. That edge of performance. The smooth shift between concern and calculation. 2 days later, I called Jim Reynolds, my financial advisor of 15 years. He'd helped me through David's estate, the college fund, every tight month, and cautious investment. "I need you to set up a secondary trust account," I said. "Private. No electronic statements. I want 10 million placed there. Quietly." There was a long pause. "That's the full amount, Celeste." "I know." "And where will the client believe it's going?" "She'll believe I'm storing it overnight." "In a safe." He didn't ask more. Jim had known me long enough to recognize the shift in my voice. Later that day, I met Mark Henley in the back corridor of St. Joseph's trauma ward. We'd worked together for over a decade. He'd gone private after retiring from hospital security. "I need a favor," I said. "Off the record. High-fidelity fakes. Currency. Something a thief wouldn't question at a glance." He raised an eyebrow. "You expecting someone to rob you?" "I'm not sure," I answered truthfully. "But I'd like to be wrong." He didn't press. Within 3 days, I had 3 duffel bags, each filled with stacks of counterfeit $500 bills, so precise even I had to squint. Embedded in the seams were microchips, GPS-enabled, silent, undetectable. The real money never even left the bank lobby. Jim oversaw the transfer himself, locked into a private trust under my name. I signed the papers. I ran every test twice. I rehearsed my lines. I told myself this was just in case. If I'm wrong, I'll look paranoid. I whispered to no one as I zipped the last bag shut. If I'm right. I never finished the sentence. I just picked up the phone and told Sienna I'd be driving into the city. I needed a favor. Just one night, somewhere safe. The first signal hit less than 5 hours after I found the note. Mark had already pulled up the monitoring system by the time I arrived at his office. On a large screen, a small, blinking dot hovered just off the Las Vegas Strip. "She didn't even wait a full day," he muttered. "She's not running," I said quietly. "She's celebrating." From there, the trail unfolded in pulses. The duffel bags traveled to Phoenix by rented car, then on to Santa Fe, each stop marked by high-end hotels, boutique spas, and private lounges. Sienna was living loudly. Brunch reservations under the name Elise Brennan. Designer bags posted on anonymous accounts that were easy enough to trace once you knew what to look for. The bags never separated. That told me one thing: she still believed the money was real. She hadn't even bothered to count it carefully. Greed had made her sloppy. I could have called the police that first day. I could have filed charges, made statements, gone to the press, spun the story into public outrage. But I didn't want noise. I wanted clarity. Instead, I called Rosa Velasquez. We weren't friends in the traditional sense, but we had history. Years ago, she'd been the lead investigator on a domestic violence case involving a nurse from my unit. I'd testified, sat in the waiting room while that nurse shook through every deposition. Rosa had kept in touch afterward, sometimes dropping by the hospital just to say hello. When I called her, she didn't hesitate. "I'm not opening a file," I told her. "Not yet. I just want to know where she's going." "That's surveillance," she said. "Then call it that." 2 days later, Rosa joined us in Mark's office. We watched the signals blink their way into Denver. A different name, a different suite. Sienna had never learned subtlety. That had always been her weakness. Everything had to be shiny. "She thinks she's free," I said, watching her jump from one state to the next. Rosa leaned back, arms crossed. "She doesn't know what she's carrying." "No," I said, my voice steady. "She thinks she won." We mapped her movements, cross-referenced hotel bookings, rental cars, spa visits. She was blazing a trail in broad daylight, and all the while, I stayed quiet. No statements, no confrontation. I didn't need drama. I needed patience. And when she finally landed somewhere long enough to plant her heels, I would step into that space not as the woman she stole from, but as the one who had never lost anything at all. The next ping came from Los Angeles. She was circling back. Of course she was. The city was still her stage. The air on the rooftop was thick with jasmine and money. Soft jazz floated beneath the clinking of cutlery and laughter, too polished to be real. I spotted her instantly perched at the edge of a curved booth near the glass railing, bathed in the glow of sunset. Sienna wore white like armor, her hair pinned up her hands, moving delicately as she stirred her cocktail. A black designer bag rested beside her on the velvet cushion, unzipped just enough for a glimpse of what she believed was her freedom. She didn't see me at first. I crossed the space slowly, heels silent on the stone floor, each step calibrated and calm. The hostess made a move to intercept me, but Rosa had already cleared it. This wasn't a surprise visit. I reached the table and stood there for a moment until Sienna looked up mid-sip. The pause between recognition and reaction was brief, but I caught it. A flicker of something sharp behind her eyes. "Still chasing fairy tales, Mom," she said, cool and amused, as though I were just a woman who'd stumbled into the wrong scene. I didn't answer. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat placing a small cloth pouch on the table between us. Her fingers tightened around the glass. She opened her mouth probably to deflect or mock or spin. I didn't let her. "I brought you something," I said, unzipping the pouch and sliding out a neat stack of $500 bills. Her eyes flicked to them, then back to me. I held them up, fanned them lightly between my fingers. "They look real, don't they? They even feel real. But they're not. They never were." Sienna's expression didn't change, but her body stiffened just enough. I kept my tone soft, almost maternal. "What you took wasn't money, Sienna. It was a test. One I prayed you wouldn't fail." She laughed then too loudly. "You think this is going to scare me?" "No," I said. "This is just the beginning." I slid the stack back into the pouch and leaned forward. "The bills you stole were fakes. Every single one, embedded with tracking chips. They've recorded every hotel, every spa, every designer boutique. You've built your fantasy with play money and left a map behind with every step." Her hands dropped to her lap, out of sight. "Don't," I said, calmly. "There's nothing in that bag worth grabbing. Not anymore." As if on cue, two plainclothes officers stepped forward from the terrace entrance. No cuffs, no shouting. Just quiet nods and quiet authority. Sienna's mouth moved, but no words came. I watched her eyes flick from the officers to me, and in that moment, something gave way behind them. Not fear, not shame exactly, but the slow, grinding weight of consequence. I stood. "You made your choice?" I said, steady as breath. "Now live with it." The officers approached. She didn't resist. I didn't watch her leave. I didn't need to. I walked past the table, past the hushed conversations and stares down the stairs, and out into the warm Los Angeles night, where Rosa waited beside the unmarked car. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then Rosa handed me the small folder of documents, confirmation of movement statements from vendors, everything we needed. "Let's go home," I said, my voice low but certain. And this time, I meant it. The offers came quickly. Prosecutors press even a documentary producer wanting exclusive rights. Everyone smelled spectacle. Everyone wanted blood. I declined them all. I met with Richard, my lawyer, in a quiet office near the courthouse. He slid the criminal complaint papers across the table pen, poised beside them. "This is airtight," he said. "If we file, she'll be arraigned within 48 hours. I looked at the documents, but didn't reach for the pen. "I don't want her locked up," I said. "I want her slowed down." Instead, I authorized a civil suit. We filed to freeze her bank accounts, flag her passport, and revoke her access to any financial tools she hadn't earned herself. Richard's team moved with surgical precision, quiet, efficient, final. She'll never get a mortgage, never open another business account. She'll be watched everywhere she goes, he told me. "Good," I said. "Let her live with that." The money stayed where it was untouched. I didn't move into the house I'd planned to buy. That dream felt distant, now shaped by a version of the future that no longer fit. Instead, I bought a smaller place in Oregon, nestled at the edge of a lake my husband once pointed to on a map. Back then, it had felt out of reach. Now it was exactly enough. I gave $1 million to a fund that helps single mothers rebuild after betrayal, not because I wanted praise, but because I understood the shape of that particular wound. I didn't want justice through headlines. I wanted repair where it mattered. The press moved on. Sienna became a cautionary tale in circles she once courted. Whispers followed her soft but sharp. I didn't feed the fire. I didn't need to. Some truths don't need shouting. At the lake house, the mornings came quietly. Coffee on the porch. Birdsong in the trees. A rhythm I hadn't known I needed until it arrived. I didn't erase the past. I let it rest where it belonged beneath the surface. Heavy, but still. And when the letter came from Sienna, weeks later, unopened and postmarked from a new address, I didn't hesitate. I slid it into the drawer beside the old family photo, and I turned back to the water. The lake doesn't ask questions. It just receives. It takes in silence, regret, memory, and gives you stillness in return. I sit at the edge of the dock most mornings, coffee warm between my palms, watching the way the light shifts on the water. That's become my new kind of prayer. No words, just presence. There are things I lost that summer, but most of them I see now were never truly mine. Not the version of Sienna I held on to, not the closeness I imagined was dormant, but waiting, not the belief that love on its own could bridge every silence. I keep a letter tucked into the back of my journal, one I wrote weeks ago but never sent. You were my everything, but I forgot to be my own. I used to think trust was the highest form of love. Now I know better. Trust is sacred, but it isn't blind. It's something you place in careful hands, not just in familiar ones. It should be earned, checked, reaffirmed. People ask me if I feel victorious. I don't. But I feel awake. I didn't lose $10 million. I lost an illusion, and that's worth far more than I ever realized. Some afternoons, I open the old scrapbook of pressed flowers Sienna made when she was 11, wild violets and brittle daisies, each labeled with careful, childish handwriting. I used to cling to that book like proof. Now, I simply turn the pages. I let the softness of those memories exist alongside the sharpness of everything that came after. They're both true. They both belong. This morning, I closed the book gently and slid it back into its shelf. The sun was already climbing past the treetops, spilling light onto the porch. So I stood, and I walked out to meet it.